buenos días, qué alegría estar con todos ustedes. Hoy el Comité Económico y Social Europeo le ha abierto las puertas a la Fundación Internacional María Luisa de Moreno.
Good morning, everyone. We are really happy to have you here today. Today, the European Social and Economic Committee opened its doors to the María Luisa de Moreno International Foundation and this Global Summit 2026, Digital Education for Real Impact.
En nuestra cumbre tendremos grandes ponentes, personas expertas y muchas entidades que han venido a conversar sobre un tema importante: la inteligencia artificial y la educación.
Today, we have a great group of panelists, real experts in these areas, and they are coming to discuss and to teach us about the education, the artificial intelligence and its impact in the education.
Entonces, damos la bienvenida y declaramos abierto este Summit, este Global Summit 2026, para que todos aprendamos, disfrutemos y también dejemos aquí en el Comité y en el Parlamento Europeo nuestra voz, la voz que viene desde muchos lugares de la Tierra.
So right now, we just want to welcome you, and we are opening officially this beautiful summit, which gives a voice to all of you experts in education from many countries around the world to share your experience and your knowledge, and we hope that you have a wonderful takeaway from this Global Summit 2026.
Entonces, les invitamos a pasar a nuestra sala donde comenzaremos esta conversación. Bienvenidos.
We now invite you to go to the room. What's the room number? We are going to a room where we're going to start the conversation. Please feel welcome, and we can proceed to the room.
Okay. A pasar a nuestra sala donde comenzaremos esta conversación. Bienvenidos.
We now invite you to go to the room. What's the room number? We are going to a room where we're going to start the conversation. Please feel welcome, and we can proceed to the room.
Okay. A pasar a nuestra sala donde comenzaremos esta conversación. Bienvenidos.
We now invite you to go to the room. What's the room number? We are going to a room where we're going to start the conversation. Please feel welcome, and we can proceed to the room.
Okay. A pasar a nuestra sala donde comenzaremos esta conversación. Bienvenidos.
We now invite you to go to the room. What's the room number? We are going to a room where we're going to start the conversation.
Good afternoon to you all. For me, it's a great honor to be able to open this session of AI with Human Values and Educational Innovation. Good afternoon to everyone, both those joining us in person and those tuning in via the live stream. It is a pleasure to welcome you to this session on AI with Human Values and Educational Innovation, where we will explore one of the most significant transformations in the education sector. We would like to thank the Maria Luisa Moreno International Foundation for facilitating this space for reflection on the impact of technology on education and on people. Artificial intelligence is redefining the process of teaching, learning, and assessment. But beyond the technology, the central question is, how do we ensure that this transformation is guided by human values? Today, we will hear perspectives from the fields of education policy, pedagogical innovation, and applied technology. Thank you very much, and I would like to welcome our speakers. I want to give an introduction to each and every one of the speakers with us today. and their presentation today. We begin with Mr. Andreas Schleicher, who will be speaking to us. He will be speaking to us in his presentation titled Switching Gears. He is the Director of Education and Skills and Special Advisor on Educational Policy at the OECD. He has just launched the Digital Education Outlook 2026 on generative AI. He oversees programs such as PISA, Student Assessment, TALIS, Teaching Survey, and the development of 21st century skills. We're also with Professor Chiadachi. She is an acting academic director of the Centre of Excellence in AI for Education at Queen Mary University of London. She leads innovation and research in digital learning, has published and lectured internationally, and has received numerous awards, including the Vice Chancellor's Award for Excellence 2021. The presentation she gives us today is about redefining higher education. We are also accompanied Professor Borja Bordel. He works at the intersection of artificial intelligence, technology, and education. Professor Bordel is a lecturer at the Polytechnic University of Madrid, at the Higher Technical School of Computer Systems Engineering, and is a member of the Advanced Telecommunications Networks and Services Engineering Group. Professor Brodel holds a PhD in Telematic Systems Engineering and a degree in Telecommunications Engineering from the Polytechnic University of Madrid. He has undertaken several research stays at the Haute École Spécialisée Occidentale and the University of Tres-os-Montes and Alto, which have allowed him to understand how technology applies to all the challenges we face today, and focus also on transparency in the process of developing these technologies. He will be sharing with us all the challenges and triumphs that we see in the integration of artificial intelligence into higher education. We are also accompanied by Alicia Berlanga. She has a strong track record in educational innovation and technologies applied to learning. Since 2023, she has been director of EduTech Cluster, an association dedicated to promoting educational technology. In 2025, she joined the board of the European EdTech Alliance, and 2026 she was elected co-president of the Global EdTech Alliance of Alliances. Her career has focused on technology and education since she began and finished her master's. All these masters cover a depth of topics that will be discussed today. She was a project coordinator at the UNESCO Chair in Higher Education Management from 2005 to 2017, managing projects in Central Asia, Armenia, Georgia, Belarus, Russia, and other places around the world. Today, she will be speaking to us about artificial intelligence and humanism in education. To begin, I will invite each one of our speakers to share initial reflection on how artificial intelligence is transforming education and what they consider to be the priorities to guarantee that this transformation is guided by human values. I would like to invite Professor Chiadachi to begin with her presentation.
So if somebody could show my slide for everyone, I can begin. And while we're waiting for that, good afternoon, everyone. And it's been a wonderful morning so far. Thank you very much for the invitation once again. And I've been given 7 minutes to talk about a little bit of what we've been doing at Queen Mary University of London. And as I mentioned in the introduction, I wear two hats. One is about leading the Centre for Excellence in AI and in Education for the whole of university. And also I hold a dean role within the Faculty of Medicine and Dentistry, where I lead a team called Digital Education Studio. So The university is a middle-sized university with 33,000 students, about 7,000 staff, and it's known for its diversity. And so we hold over 170 nationalities of students, and they come from all sorts of social backgrounds. And so half of them are about first in the family to go to the university. More than 70% are ethnic minority backgrounds, and we're part of the Russell Group University that holds the most inclusive university of its kind. And so you can imagine the kind of affordances that we look for in incorporating digital technologies in our education is really at the core of what we do. So this is a university promotion video. I won't share this, but I'm told that this slide will be shared with everyone afterwards. And so I included lots of links and videos and readings that people can do. And so please get a copy. And just to say, this video was created because we are shortlisted for the Times Higher Education University of the Year. Again, talking about the social mobility, inclusion and equity agenda we hold for the UK sector. Across the UK, there is a lot of narratives as such, and then I think some of them might be familiar too, also to you. Students are stopping learning because of the artificial intelligence taking over how they learn, and the students are cheating through the university degrees, and then the jobs would be at risk. And so as you can see, the UK government is stepping in to talk about how the nation is supporting the world of work and job security and developing human-centered skills so that people are getting ready for the world of work into the future. And this is very much the context in which we do our work at Queen Mary University of London. And so the recent writings that I've been doing has been increasingly about the equity issue. So the shadow AI university idea that I talk about is this two-tier university students experience that we find. So those students who are confident and equipped and capable of using technologies would continue to do well. And some of them are paying their pro license to artificial intelligence and using it for all sorts of reasons, including assessment. But I'm concerned about those students who might not be on our radar to be learning how to use AI for education, and they're getting behind. And so that is the sort of work that we try to do. And this techno-solutionism, I think somebody talked about the foundation was romanticized, but I also can say that technology has carried a lot of narratives around romanticizing, providing those solutions. But we also know in reality, technology brings challenges too, the digital divide, the poverty, and technology sometimes simply fails. And so how do we work those technologies more critically in acknowledging those challenges, but also bringing opportunities into our education is the kind of work that I do as an education leader. And so I talked about Digital Education Studio, my team of digital education experts. And so they are brought in to create online and blended courses for the Faculty of Medicine and Dentistry. And as you can imagine, medicine and dentistry are one of those areas where AI and technology is rapidly developing. And so our faculty members need to be able to use AI in our education and also prepare them into the world of clinical work into the future. And so that's very much the kind of work that we do. And then again, this is a video, a sort of a vision of our team and then the kind of work that we do with our clinicians. And it's really about preparing the human-centered approach, the clinical decision-making, the ethical clinical decision-making that people need to be able to do is the angle that we bring. So quickly onto the other hat that I wear for the Center for Excellence in AI in Education. This is sort of new, 2 months into this leadership role. It's across the university. We created this center to be able to grapple this question of how AI is rapidly changing the way our students learn, but also faculty members need to be able to teach. And so it's also important to acknowledge the innovators and champions that have been doing a lot of work already in this space. And then I think it varies across one discipline to another. But computer science, for example, the data science, where AI is very prevalent, and then researchers are using AI for different things, to think about arts and science, where clear alignment needs to be more explicitly done. That is a sort of acknowledgement that we give, that we're not starting everything from scratch, but there are lots of innovators across the university that we can work with, and those are the students that need to be thinking about how they can transform their lives with the use of AI. So there is another slide that was supposed to be at the end, but it's missing. So I'll just say a couple of things about the strategy that I've been writing and implementing. There's 6 areas of priorities for this center. The first 2 is about bringing community and innovating the next generation of educators and students. And so it's bringing that identity and brand for the center. The second part is about capacity building of staff and students. And so curriculum transformation, assessment redesign, thinking about what AI literacy looks like in that particular domain of knowledge is what we're trying to do with academics coming from different faculties and departments. And then the last one is about governance and technology as a procured platform and softwares that we can use for education. So we're putting in the policy and then the governance structure for the university to be able to procure technology and evaluate those emerging technologies for education. And it's a university-wide strategic work that I lead, and there are lots of great work happening already. And so I think it's about 7 minutes, so I'll stop here. And any questions and dialogue later on, looking forward to having a further conversation with you. Thank you.
We thank the Professor Chiadachi for her presentation. Definitely, artificial intelligence advances with great strides, but there are also great worries and great cross questions, especially about regulation and governance, and also these gaps which leave worry in terms of access for all communities and for all people. We are now going to continue with the next presentation. Thank you for the time. Thank you for staying within the 7 minutes. We now continue with Professor Borja Bordel Sanchez. Welcome.
Thank you very much for the invitation, for the opportunity to carry out this presentation. And as they were saying earlier, I'm going to be for 6 years the head of the technology department in the University of Madrid, the Polytechnic University of Madrid. And the university in the last few years, we've been doing some work, and we've carried out, or we have some conclusions about AI and its impact on university. The university has a general program that allows us to finance some actions that the teachers want to carry out for education purposes. And we've financed some parts that are AI related. We have recorded 39 distinct case studies that come from helping to the teacher to another extent, which is helping the students in different environments for different activities. And well, we have prepared a report in a QR code that should be coming up on the screen, but I hope you will have later through the QR. You can get the report that we have on the case studies that we have here in our university from the teachers. And from these 39 projects, I want to speak out of these 39 projects. I would like to speak in detail about some. For example, I would classify the projects that we have in 3 different groups. We have begun with these from 2022, and we have begun with these projects with the idea that AI will be a revolution, and that was the motivation, that it will be in the future, and how the different disciplines that we have in our university, how AI can be applied to all of these things. And so the work that we do has been very collaborative among the multidisciplinary groups in our university. We've, for example, improved the apps that we have in our university, and gone through through a lot of the data that we have in order to improve our systems for the users. And well, generative AI, chatbots, there are many different names for it. We're not going to go into depth in this aspect, but well, among the strategies that we have, which is related to the 2 other groups that I spoke about in terms of the projects that we have. So an aspect is to attend the needs of the students. It's difficult already to meet their needs, so we are using AI to help out students. The students right now are examining their knowledge through the chatbots that we have, and it's really tightly linked with the teacher and how they are meant to carry out. It's led by the teacher. And it's very wonderful how through the generative AI and the teacher, they are able to get many different examples out of different subjects for a better depth of the learning that the students have. And so the AI is a great tool for us at the moment in these aspects. And well, for the teachers, they are evaluating a lot of the online virtual materials that they have for the students. They're also using surveys to analyze and to try to improve the learning through the classes. And it's very interesting how the students throughout the year, they have different experiences, they find themselves in different situations, and the teachers are able to identify all of these patterns of behaviors to attend better the needs of the students. Depending on the study or the attitudes that they're having towards study throughout the year. I do not want to extend myself too much. We will later on speak about other projects. But in terms of a more general vision, I wanted to speak about the state in which we find ourselves now. AI is helping us to redefine the way in which we do things with students. And well, it's great how it's a tool that it's helping us democratize education. Through the integration of AI, we're able to understand our students better and help them out in a more personalized way. And well, as you all know, different AI models cost, depending on their plan, they can do or they have a different potential or a different quality, and it's not fair that in a class there are some that have a stronger AI bot because of the plan that they pay, whilst others, they do not have that. So we find here a disadvantage, and we do not want this to convert or to turn into a weakness of this. And, well, on another topic, nowadays, the way in which the students express themselves towards us has changed a lot. And it's a new world in which we're in, and we maybe have realized that some of the way in which they express themselves, the students, have worsened, and it's more difficult to understand their needs. And a threat that we have with AI is that it seems like everything is already done. Yes, AI can give some answers, and well, it's true, but we want to get more depth when we learn, and it's like an enemy, AI, for these topics, because it seems like sometimes it has an absolute solution or response for everything, and this is a sort of challenge that we have. And yes, we have this tool, but we want to have a better integration of this in our university, in the education in general, so that teachers may be able to have maybe a more controlled support that they can give. I do not want to go over the 7 minutes. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Borja, for your presentation. I think it has generated great questions amongst our crowd and our audience, as well as those who are connecting online. I'm very sure at the end of this panel, we'll have very important, very interesting questions. And I want to continue with Ms. Alice Berlanga, expert in innovation, AI, humanism, and future of education. Welcome. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being with you here today. Well, I'm going to do my presentation in Spanish, but I prepared it all in English, so I hope there's not much of an issue. I hope all our interpreters can do it well. And if not, I can switch to English. There's no issue. Whatever's easiest. Well, I'll do it in Spanish then. Well, I represent the cluster. Well, it's a group of companies and entities from civil society that work together for example, in my case, in my personal case of the EduTech cluster, for innovation in technology in classrooms, both in a public services, school, university aspect, even including amongst families, where we often forget this new paradigm is very important in influencing. I also represent, I am the co-president, co-chair of the Global EduTech Alliance of Alliances, and executive director of this cluster. And through these roles, I can see how educative technology is impacting it. AI is just one of them amongst many others. And we are from the UNESCO beginning to work on a whole series of research projects and studies to help reach that common discourse that universities and academics seem to lack when a new technology arrives. Because behind technology there are businesses, and often behind those businesses there are even bigger businesses. So therefore it's very important for us to make that reflection together. From what I want to talk to you today, is slightly more mainly focused on how can we encapsulate industry, educational institutions, and other agents, may that be societies, foundations, families, how we can do a study of the context, because we have to understand the context that we see everything, and how this impacts all the different environments, because they're all very different. You can't talk about AI with a 15-year-old in the same way you talk to professors and academics, or if I go to corporate training. And therefore, there is a great disparity in terms of the audience these technologies have, as well as the way they use these technologies and which technologies they use. Because we talk a lot about generative AI, but there's multiple types of AI. And that is where we see one of the great challenges. So this is what we seek to discuss mainly, to defend technology as something neutral without it taking a stance or a position. For example, I have great big companies amongst the cluster which have created AI models, but there are others that are using AI in a more contextual manner, not based on a fixed issue, but in general, for example, with tackling issues in the classroom or tackling issues of diversity, for example, as Borja talked about. But then we also have entities that create public policy. And so therefore what we try to find that I will be that intermediary between all the agents, so that when we create acts and legislation related to AI, it can be applicable to all sectors, and so that there may be a guide that might be applied to education and that might be applied to academia and the university context, that might be used in the edtech sector, so that companies, businesses can know what to do, how to act. And so therefore, we are in the middle of all this. What happens? Well, at the end of all this, we have realized that we've been doing this. We've had this huge congress in Barcelona for the past 3 years. Coincidentally, own AI. We started talking about the generative AI. Then we started talking about data and the importance of data with regards to AI. And this year we talked about humanism. And we have our keynote speaker was an paleoanthropologist who has allowed us to understand the evolution of human beings based on technology. And it's very interesting. And I invite you all through the website of the Congress's website, because all the presentations that have been made, that layer or that topic of humanism is what governs the use of a technology or a tool. And that is what we always try to focus on and contextualize. So the purpose is very important. AI, metaverse, immersive reality, these are all very important, but what for and who uses them? Not everything works for all the audiences available. And that's very important. It's very important to understand this across all educational levels. The digitalization is going so quickly that we don't have the time, or at least I struggle often to put universities and businesses to work together because of the speed of the technology. It goes so quick, so fast, that often we can't find common ground. And therefore it's incredibly important that we do an educational reflection on AI, which hasn't been done. No, we've been doing it now, but it's been shared before we do the analysis, an educational analysis. And that's why all the boys and the girls of the world have their AI on their phone. Well, we'll have the opportunity now to redesign education. We're in a new stage, which I'm sure many of us lived through. I'm sure we all lived through the change when the internet use became widespread, and we saw how we had to adapt to that technology. And I share with you here where we believe it might go, where AI can go, and what are the risks, which I have shared previously. And here I have left you a framework so you can understand, and I explained it to you at the beginning, but so you can understand how we work, how our whole ecosystem works, so that the whole ecosystem can speak the same language. And it's very tricky, very difficult, but we have to find spaces like these where we are today, where there is public administration bodies, where there's academics, where there's researchers, where there are private citizens, where we're all represented, so we can all have that shared conversation, which we which I want to share at the end of this space. Very important, matter of fact, very important, the reflection of who and for who. And that is what our conference culminated in. What technology are we using and for what public, what audience? So, for example, we can't develop legislation policy for citizens of the future who this technology is going to be completely different for. I wanted to transmit and share with you the importance of talking from a point of view of the ecosystem and not to lose certain environments, certain contexts, such as very important contexts, such as ethics and digital sovereignty. Thank you very much.
Bueno, definitivamente.
Well, definitely, the time is so limited for such an important topic, such a relevant topic. Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Dachi. Thank you, Professor Bordel. Thank you, Alicia, for each one of your presentations. We have talked about very important topics today. I have a few questions before we give way to conclusions and closing remarks. And before we give way to the next session, we talked about financing. We have talked about gaps. I have a question that is a great cause of worry in terms of access. There is a risk that artificial intelligence widens gaps between institutions with a great amount of resources and those in more vulnerable contexts. It's a question I want to open to each one of you. I'd also want you guys to talk about the abilities that a teacher has to develop, the skills a teacher has to develop to be able to use AI in a more positive and productive way. Because we faced many changes across the years. Alicia mentioned, for example, the arrival of the internet, but there's something that's always been present, ethics. And that's the great challenge and our great commitment and our great responsibility to create a solid framework and structure for future generations. I'm not sure if any of you want to talk about this, develop on this. We would also like to listen from our audience. We could open the space for 5 minutes of discussion.
Thank you. And I'll take first part of the question about the equity issue. And as I mentioned, this has been...
Micro, sorry.
Thank you. Can you hear me better now? Excellent. So the equity issue has been one which we need to really grapple. And as I mentioned, this has been the kind of recent writing that I've been doing. At our university, as I mentioned, there are diverse cohorts of students from over 170 nationalities, and then they have different level of access, but also literacy and skills in being able to use technology. And so as a university, what we have done is to ensure that there is a basic level of technology. So we have Microsoft Copilot available for all staff and students. And so as long as they study with us and teach with us, there is that Copilot AI technology available for everyone. That said, being able to use Copilot in an ethical, responsible, and effective manner is a different conversation. And so that's where the work of the center exists, in being able to run workshops, teach people how to use AI for education. And we follow the UNESCO's AI literacy framework as a competency framework to make sure that the human-centered capabilities are upheld, and that's at the core of grappling with those technologies. And then the second question was about...
We were talking about...
And so this is an interesting question once again. And often what we find ourselves talking about is not about technology in the end. It's about the mindset. It's about how people bring their relationship with the technology. And so that's sort of the conversation with university professors, particularly those who might resist change. And change is difficult for everyone, and there's usually good reasons for it. And so that's that's where we want to understand where people come from, where they are currently, and where we need to get to. Often when we come across resistance, how we change this narrative is where students are already, where students are going into the future, world of work where AI is ubiquitous. And so we as faculty members and professors need to be able to use this so that our graduates are ready for jobs and world of work. And so that's sort of the tension that we find, but also progress in our conversation where it needs to be. It's not a silver bullet, and then I think we all come across challenges, but it's actually never about technology. Lots of revolutions happened with technology, and AI is another one, but we need to talk about human mindsets and then how people are willing to do this change as a humanity and then through for the future. I'll stop here.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. In respect to the first part of the question, inequality, we many times speak about sovereignty of technology, but we must first understand the basics of this technology. We must have or do the research to understand the fundamentals. And this this issue may be tackled by education institutions, yes, but we must understand that is the companies that are creating these tools and they are selling it and doing commerce with it. We understand that there is a difference in terms of the tools or the quality of tools that we get, because if you can pay for it, then you have it, and if not, then you cannot. So it depends, or is up to governments, public institutions. They have intervened, some of them, but I suppose that maybe we should have a better system. Because maybe, well, I don't know if it should be we should use public finance for these things, but I think it transcends education institutions in terms of this topic. In our institution, yes, we pay the licenses of Copilot, but we are still paying for this tool to a company. And well, maybe we will not have this later on if the prices increase, for example. And in terms of the other part of the question, the abilities that the teachers must have, well, it goes in line with what the teacher, with what Adachi was saying earlier, that it's not about a technical problem in terms of the accessibility. No. And well, for now, we also know this other topic in terms of the sources, which are good sources or not. We understand that other problem. Those are basic problems that we have now moved forwards from. And now it's not about looking at these things, but now reflecting on the content that we get. And all of this is in the end related to the people that we have in university and a lot of the space that we have for people. If we have less people, as we are having in recent years, they're becoming less involved in these institutions, then we will be able to have a worse or little impact. Thank you.
La profesora Lisa.
I know we have questions, but now we give way to Professor Alicia. I want to talk about the second point. Fundamentally, we're at a moment where the role of the teacher always has been and always will be to be a facilitator of learning with X resources. In the time of the Greeks, the speech, oratory skills. In later times, and books appeared, the print, then the revolution. For example, I can't imagine it was a revolution. It must have been when the printing press first arrived. The teacher remains being the facilitator of learning. With whatever the resources they may be, they never lose that role. And now the technology is so sophisticated, everything is so easy. We all believe we are content creators, designers. We all want to wear many hats. But in reality, the teacher is a teacher. The teacher has always been asked for many years, has been asked to do many roles, many tasks that went more towards working hard. And hard work that often was a waste of the teacher's time. But at the end of the day, the role of the teacher is to facilitate learning and reflection, critical thinking skills, instilling those. And artificial intelligence will require a lot of critical thinking and a lot of critical analysis, because it's exactly what we need to teach people to do. For example, previously we used to say, we have thousands, for example. Yes, there's so many examples. But you have to go to your own. You have to find your own example, which you understand, which at the end of the day will allow you to understand and to learn. And because in order to be able to reach that, you need to have somebody accompanying you to support you in being able to take that step and learn. And previously there was advice that was up in the air, but now we're trying to make it more tangible and arrive it and bring it to horizontal skills. And this is going to be very interesting. And for example, the first question touches upon my own work directly, because I represent also these big businesses as well. When we talk about sovereignty, and it's going to be very important when we're going to sit down all these big companies at a table so they can speak. When we speak to them about sovereignty, we talk about mainly and especially we have to try reach as many audiences as possible, as many audiences. And in order to be able to do that, you can't stick to one. Even students use multiple. They don't use just Copilot. There's so many different tools that they use. And therefore, from an educational point of view, we can't just stick to one. We have to know them all. Work with each and every one of them and see what works best for you. Because if not, there are huge companies which are very powerful. And what today works very well, or what worked very well at the beginning of generative AI, 3 companies may now be way ahead of them. Because everything is advancing at such a great speed. And so therefore we have to give teachers the space, the time to be able to test them, to try them, and to be able to learn how to communicate them and share them. Share the good use of the tool to students. Because if not, they'll use them all. And we know that. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to each and every one of you. All your answers were very inspiring of debate, were very interesting. Professor Adachi's topic on resistance to those changes, something that Alicia talked about, which really caught my attention, was how AI affects countries depending on their context, their culture. And I think that's a very important point. And in that, and based on that, I think it's good if we give way to questions from the audience. Please, any of you audience members who want to give a question, please go ahead, raise your hand. Can you hear me? I have 2 questions. One is for Borja and one is for Alicia. For Borja, you know that I am talking about the impact of AI on employability. So I thought it was very interesting how you mentioned that AI generative gives you absolute answers, and absolute answers don't work for everything. So where is the responsibility of the app, of the program, of the individual in that context? What happens in that context? And sorry if I touch upon a different subject. How do we talk about the silver generation who are being pushed out of the labor market, who have the experience, who have the knowledge, the time to be able to distinguish what question is correct for each context through their own life experience. That's for Borja. And for Alicia, a brief one. You spoke about the issues between universities and businesses and the gap that is being caused and generated by the differences in speed. What opportunity is offered to us out of AI?
Bueno, yo creo que
Well, I think that has been happening and will continue to happen because the industrial sector goes according to the demand of the society. And it usually has very rigid structures because the public sector must assure quality. And sometimes we lack the time. But in the present or at the moment, there are some titles or courses that have this link between the educational and the last technologies. And every time there's more dialogue or these links between these. But it's just true how some companies, they go at a speed in which it's just too difficult to keep up with. And well, I still believe that AI allows for a better conversation between companies and tutors, academic tutors, or academics that try to do the link between these advancements and their institutions. They are generating many projects as teams, and they are making that progress. There isn't a company that of these kind that don't work in a team or in a group to understand these better. If you have a company and you don't put these products to the test with some academics and test it throughout a methodology, a structure, then you generate this, or you have this lack of trust in your product, and that's where the need is for these academics and universities.
Thank you. Well, let's see. Tools don't have responsibility. The tool is a tool. If I could ask one thing, well, there's two options. Either companies should be more transparent with the data that they use to train their models on, or to use data that can be explained. AI is not a definite because they only work on what they've been trained on and on nothing else. There may be multiple realities, and we can talk about the presence that different topics have on what is being produced, and there are topics that have been historically hidden or removed. It's difficult to be able to train models on this information. So either by one way, we must either be more transparent, which is by how we are training these models, and so people may be aware of the limitations of these models, and so all audiences are aware of this. Because even though some models may not have access to all the necessary data to be able to be sufficient, or we might also consider the alternative, which is using AI in a way that explains its chain of reasoning, which is a black box, which leads to people not being able to understand how it reaches the conclusion, but it is considered more effective, perhaps. The ideal solution would be to integrate both options, but we have to be very careful because recently in the press, it has been said a horrible thing is going on in some places. And in some cases, those people are being hired, which are data fishers who just collect data on their own experience so that AI can learn about their jobs and their roles so that they can then come in and replace those who fulfill their roles, because that is a reality, a current reality. But our experience, and anybody can put their experience, for example, in a book, for example, there are always things that are lost if we try to operate in this way. Therefore, we have to be very careful in the way we manage this, and not say, well, yes, I'm going to hire these 55-year-olds to put their experience into AI and then get rid of them, because this can't be done. Because I understand businesses work on margins, but this is not possible. Sorry, can I ask a question? Can you hear me? The question touched upon the opposite. Not how to replace an over 55-year-old, but instead to give them the role they should have based on the experience they do have, and the experience in taking choices and the ability to discern AI hallucinations from reality. And well, that's businesses, the industry, sales. How do they approach the end of these people's careers, which are valuable, because these decisions are being taken? And we'd have to look at it case by case, because surely we'd have to see if the loss, and I'm going out on a limb because I come from an educational background, what can I imagine is happening, that the loss and the deficiency once knowledge is lost is much lower than the savings. The knowledge experience lost is much less valuable than the money saved from not hiring this person. And we also understand we have to give the opportunity to young people so that we may all be on the same level. And we have to give people with experience and opportunity. Yes, I agree. Thank you very much. Very well. We're coming to the close of this session. We want to give way to one more question, only one more question. If anybody else has a question in the audience, please go ahead. Here we have a question. No, on that side instead. Please keep the question brief so we can meet the session timings. My question is for Professor Dachi. Knowing fields such as medicine and dentistry, how are you going to prepare future generations in AI so that the moment that they go out to work in the real world, in a clinical field with real patients, to avoid them offering diagnoses that are based solely in AI and go more towards the criteria and what they learned throughout their career, throughout their education, because these are people going to be educated for the entirety of their degree in AI, but how are we going to ensure that the social aspect is not lost? How are you planning on preparing students for the future, professional future? Thank you.
Thank you. Brilliant question. And I can say in short answer, with challenges. And so that's exactly the work of the center and my team within the faculty. When we talk about the critical AI literacy, we follow the UNESCO's AI framework. But when it comes to clinical application of AI, it looks very different. And we have so many specializations of medicine. And so when we work with the faculty members, we talk about those AI applications in clinical settings, in placements, where students are actually exposed to working with clinicians using those kind of different AIs for clinical decision making. But often, again, that conversation looks much more ethical framing of, given this is the imaging that AI picked up as an early detection of cancer, for example. But do we trust this, and why? And how do we make those decisions both clinically but also ethically? Because then decision made, you have to be able to communicate with patients and that social aspect that you talked about. And so those are very much geared towards clinical placements where high tech of AI use exist. When it comes to AI usage for learning and an assessment, we very much have conversation about general bots, so the core pilots that I mentioned, to be used in curriculum for medicine and dentistry. But you probably know the curriculum for medicine and dentistry is often very packed and very notoriously slow for change. And so they still use this kind of do one, see one, teach one, that kind of apprenticeship model of people learning things in in-person, practical, hands-on sessions where they learn about medicine and dentistry. And so doing things online with the general bot like Microsoft Copilot is a big change. And we do a lots of capacity building workshops in changing the curriculum, embedding the critical AI literacy with the faculty members, but it's a very slow change. But as I mentioned, we need to talk about why we need to do this, where students are going, and we really need to change the practice of medical and dental teaching for our students into the future. And so very much challenge, but very surely and slowly progress that we're making, I feel as though. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Bueno, queremos agradecer a todos.
Well, we want to give thanks to all our speakers. We wish we could spend more time on the topic, but we now need to give way to the second session. This conversation reminds us that AI is not only the challenge, but also an opportunity to bolster education and to ensure that we are acting responsibly. I want to thank you all for your contributions. Your contributions have been truly valuable. And we'll be collecting a very beautiful memory from all this. I ask that we will give these a round of applause. And we now give way to Mr. Julián Sepúlveda so he can take charge on the second session for today.
Are we going off the stage?
Yes, we
are posing for the photo.
Oh, really?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
One more time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Señor Borja, muchas gracias. Gusto. Julián.
Muy buenas tardes para todos.
Good afternoon to you all. I want to thank all the speakers from the previous session for their contribution, for their experience they're sharing with us. We see the importance of AI, the ethics, and also inclusion are challenges that we are still yet to address when putting the AI in context. That is why we're going to give way to the second session based on a very important topic, not only for the present, but also for the future. digital education as a driver of inclusion. A few decades ago, we saw AI through films, through sci-fi films, science fiction films, and that's how we understood the Industrial Revolution lasted for many years and went on for many years. And we see how the technological revolution goes even faster, and it goes at a pace, unforeseen pace. And that is when we realize this technological revolution is having great impact on education. Digital education is no longer just an addition or a complement. It is, in many contexts and many places around the world, it is or has become the main channel, the main way of learning. From here, we are going to reflect how virtual campuses and the application of technology, specifically AI platforms, have the potential to open academic access, close regional gaps. But nevertheless, I want to leave you with a question, which I'm sure with our speakers we'll be able to answer at the end. And it's a key question. Are we using virtual campuses merely as technological platforms? So are we using them only as technological platforms, AI, digital learning platforms, digital courses, or genuine instruments of inclusion, equity, and social cohesion? This is a question that we want to talk about. And through the speakers and through our panelists, we hope to find an answer and find that connection between education and inclusion. Because the panelists of the first panel, our first session, left it as a challenge. Let's see if we can find an answer amongst the experience of all our panelists. And from this global perspective, this discussion is transcendental and incredibly relevant. And we must be able to combine, because what's necessary is a combination between digital education and innovation and equity and inclusion. And to lead the discussion, we have three panelists with extensive experience in their academic and professional lives, perspectives on innovative education and quality digital education. And that is why I would like to introduce you to our three panelists. I have the joy to present to you Margarita Lane. She is a senior economist in the labor market division of the OECD's affairs. OECD. She leads a research on the intersection between technology and human capital and analyzes how the digital transformation and artificial intelligence are reshaping global economies. Margarita will be sharing with us her presentation entitled AI for Neuro-Inclusion in Education and Vocational Training. Go ahead, Margarita.
Much. So I think for this panel today, we're all here to talk about inclusion, but I think we're all taking a different interpretation or looking at a different aspect of inclusion. And so the aspect I'm going to look at is really neuro-inclusion. This is really the idea that we all think, learn, and work in different ways. Our brains just work differently. This is totally natural. And so at the OECD, we did this study on the use of AI to support neurodivergent learners in vocational education and training. And so I'd really just like to start with some statistics, which really will give you a sense of the scale of the issue. So for example, did you know that adults with ADHD could be 10 to 25 percentage points less likely to be in employment than adults without ADHD? that 50 to 75% of adults with autism spectrum disorders are unemployed, or that students with learning disabilities have twice the risk of leaving school before completion as their peers. I mean, this is really striking, and I think it tells us that there are education systems and workplaces that really aren't set up for neuro-inclusion. There are a lot of neurodivergent people who would like to be learning, working, contributing, but are just stuck in these workplaces and education systems that aren't suitable for them. And so really, that's the motivation behind this report that we launched in February. I also have a QR code if you're interested in learning more. Essentially, the project focused on neuro-inclusion and on neurodivergent learners, but it also focused on a specific part of the education system which deals with vocational education and training. And the reason why I think this is so interesting is that I think most of what we see in the media or in policy discussions about use of AI in education tends to look at kind of academic learning and at higher levels of education, for example. So we can imagine how AI, how ChatGPT could be used to analyze Shakespeare or to solve a maths problem set. But actually, there are some interesting questions here about how AI can be used in training, which is essentially there to teach practical job-specific skills and to teach skills in an environment that actually might look a lot like a work environment. So, for example, vocational education and training looks a little bit different in different countries, but apprenticeships are the main form of vocational education and training in most countries. So, what does it look like when AI is helping a student for learning taking place in a real work environment, for example, in a hospital ward, in a commercial kitchen, in a beauty salon, or on a construction site? I think this is really interesting. So let me just get into, first of all, what is the potential of AI here? I mean, I think this is what everybody is going to talk about today. The real strength of AI is in how it enables materials to be personalized and adapted. It allows us to move beyond this assumption of the average learner, who doesn't exist, and allow us to consider that there are different ways of learning. So I'm going to skip past this one quickly, but I really want to talk about the use of mixed reality, so augmented and virtual reality, because these are very closely connected to AI. There are some very interesting applications that we came across in vocational education and training. So, for example, once you have a virtual environment, you can actually also adapt the environment in ways that you cannot adapt a real work or learning environment. So we talked to educators who told us about a driving simulator, for example, where you can actually blur out unnecessary information until the person gains confidence, gains skills, and then you can gradually add it in as so you can add in the trees, the birds, maybe a person crossing the street. You can add this in for example, learners that have difficulty concentrating or who experience overstimulation. Another example or another advantage of virtual reality is that it allows people to practice and it allows them to fail, but to fail safely. And this is a really crucial part of learning and of also gaining confidence. So, for example, we talked to educators in a Finnish vocational institution where learners use smart glasses to visit a work site virtually before they actually go there in real life. So they have a chance, again, to build confidence, to get rid of any social anxiety before they actually go there. We also, people really had a lot of optimism about the use of tools, so digital support tools, to help with planning and time management. These can be a struggle for people with ADHD in particular. If you have challenges with memory, for example. And So, for example, this can help you. There are tools which help you carry out sequential tasks. For example, in a hospital, a tool that helps a person consider all the steps that they need to go through in order to, for example, load hospital laundry into an industrial machine. There are tools that help with this. Or, for example, there are digital support systems as well, which if you're on your way to a workplace or to your apprenticeship, for example, and the bus doesn't arrive, well, there's actually an app on your phone that you can support that will tell you, no need to stress. Actually, what you can do is, here's one strategy. You call the people, you tell them you're going to be late. You maybe wait for the next bus, or you call a trusted friend. But there's, it gives you strategies that that you may not be able to access in the moment due to stress. But it's a support that can exist there. And some people we talked to actually talked about the potential to link these technologies with wearable solutions as well. The idea that you can have a small device with you that goes with you. And even potentially in the future, wearables that can actually measure physiological signs of stress to actually intervene earlier before, so you don't necessarily have to go to the device for help. It will ask you if you want help. And then the last area of potential that I'll just highlight here is in the area of accessibility, and this just the idea that your instructor or teacher may be providing materials and instructing in kind of one mode, but maybe that's not the mode that suits you. Maybe you prefer to see information written down, for example. So in the report, we talk about note-taking tools and speech-to-text tools. And I think these tools are not new, so they're maybe not the most exciting to talk about, but they are so fundamental, they're so important, and they really have come on in recent years due to improvements in large language models. They make them much more fluid in how they work, and also due to advances in cloud computing, so they can operate on devices, small mobile devices essentially, which is again really important here for adapting to different work and learning settings. Of course, there are barriers. These tools have not solved the issues that we have. I mean, I think a significant barrier here is the fact that we are looking at a big diversity of work and learning settings in vocational education and training. Often this is learning that's preparing you to work in an environment and work on your feet in an environment which is maybe unpredictable. It's not working at your desk necessarily in front of a computer. And so there are natural challenges here there are technical challenges that prevent very exciting innovations from being used in this area. There can also be a lack of integration. I mean, you can understand how, for example, even on your phone, even if you have a voice assistant, it can't necessarily access the calendar and the messaging service and the email because they're all different providers. But another aspect of this, which I think is really important, is from, in the previous session, we learned that, people really can, in university, they are able to access this like really great range of tools. And you could imagine, for example, a student with autism spectrum disorder discovering a tool that really helps them, for example, write an email or write essays. And then they go into the workplace, and actually the workplace says, no, we don't allow that type of tool here. You can use our tools. We have this and this and this. So there can be really a disconnect between where people have to give up their favorite tools as they transition from learning to work. I'm just going to skip to bias here. One form of bias is that, for example, large language models are trained on internet data. And for anyone who has ever been on the internet, I think everyone here, it's not necessarily the most tolerant space. And this is the type of information that's obviously being used to train LLM tools. And as we heard in the previous session, over-reliance and the idea that using these tools could hinder the development of critical skills is a very severe risk here. So what can policymakers do? So OECD is an organization that gives advice to governments. So this is mostly aimed at what governments can do. But many countries already have frameworks for encouraging or for mandating accessibility, for ensuring that people with disability have rights and can exercise those rights. There's also legislation about or regulation regarding AI emerging in different countries. So it's about implementing and applying these frameworks and seeing where the gaps are. Clearly, teachers are being asked to do more, and so they need resources, right? They need resources and support. Then next is there's so much out there. There are so many tools that can be used in this space, and actually a lot of the time the issue is that students, that institutions, that employers, that teachers are being overwhelmed with all of the new tools that are being released. And so there are some national bodies or steps that governments can take to help guide people to tools that work, tools that successfully mitigate some of the risks. Government, already in many countries fund assistive technologies to help participation of people with disability or neurodivergent people in training and in work. So that's clearly something else. And the last thing is to encourage developers to improve accessibility and also to bring neurodivergent students and teachers into the development process where possible as well. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Margarita.
Thank you very much, Margarita. Thank you very much, Margarita, for sharing your speech with us and bringing to us which has become a challenge for the educational system, for the medical system, seeing how children are being diagnosed with ADHD and how it's becoming a challenge for health systems in different countries. And thank you, Margarita, for bringing to us this context, this understanding of AI in this context. Because if we're going to talk about inclusion, we have to find the different contexts in which inclusion needs to be discussed in. And so she brings to us a very important one that requires much attention. And the combination between those who design public policy as well as educational institutions and the private citizen and families, finding that common ground and finding that way how we can support them all in organizing their time and all the benefits she explained to us, but also the risks that we might face when trying to apply and use these tools in people, for example, with learning difficulties or cognitive difficulties. We are now going to continue with another one of our panelists. We're with Silvana Cataldo, who is a leader in advancing telecommunications and entertainment. Currently, she is a team trainer and the academic coordinator of the teacher training and learning team of University of San Isidro, and she will be talking to us with her presentation titled Voice of the World 2026. Welcome, Silvana. Go ahead, please. Thank you very much. Well, I'm going to talk to you about an investigation that we're doing at the University of San Isidro, which talks about or seeks to propose improvements to educational disparities, and we try to focus on these disparities because this disparity occurs where there is a lack of, for example, connectivity, and where students have difficulty to access to digital technology, and therefore we're trying to see how we can find a solution that addresses these conditions. And we can all acknowledge that we are immersed in a moment where digital culture is a true revolution, and it's changing the way we live our lives, how we interact, how we consume and share information. And these changes are immense and are causing us to reflect, and we are in an opportunity to address a fundamental issue. And we have the opportunity to decide who we want to be in this new culture. And it's a moment where digital skills and access to technology is very important. But we have focused so much on, for let's say, access to the digital world, that we haven't played the same emphasis on thinking that paradigms, teaching and learning paradigms have shifted, and that digital culture affects the way in which we understand the world currently, and the way in which students need to learn now. I work, for example, in a university. It's still a lot more traditional, and it's not, and this technology is accompanying us in this process. Because we have a lot of data now to be able to understand if something's not working. For example, in reading and writing. For example, in the last 5 years, regionally, me being from Argentina, there is a great worry with regards to results and what they indicate, because the tests we do at primary and secondary level is worrying, and as well as access to university as an indicator. This was a recent assessment, what we're sharing on the slide. What we're seeing is that we're seeing that secondary school students and the people we are trying to target with our discussion, we see almost half of the students don't reach the necessary levels in language arts, in the Spanish language, which affects their ability to understand and engage with the material, and therefore can't develop beyond the basic skills in a moment, in a context where these skills are essential. Nevertheless, they still have to navigate these digital spaces, but do not have the ability to connect with them efficiently. If we go to a rural context, the data is even more worrying, because 5 out of every 10 15-year-olds do not have the minimum proficiency level in reading. We're talking about teenagers, adolescents who should have already passed the original alphabetization stage. And therefore, we need to ensure we can develop the skills and bring them up to ensure that they are competent readers, so they can also express their ideas. And these are students who have also haven't developed the skills to be able to express and defend an idea clearly and engage with others, or engage with the texts or cultural material that they need to be able to progress through life. And therefore, these are students who are literate, but it's poor. And we need to urgently work with them, because they navigate these digital spaces. And just because you occupy a digital space doesn't mean you have the skills or the knowledge necessary to be able to interact with it. And this is especially the case with young people who this is a common issue with. Based from past experiences, which I'm now going to share with you, artificial intelligence acts as a great help in this regard, because it's going to allow us to work with data. I coordinate a degree in reading comprehension and literacy skills. And firstly, one of these, and teaching people to read and write is not necessarily a language teacher's responsibility, but it's their responsibility to work with data. What are the data that they need to observe to see in order to be able to intervene in a personalized way? Because these are processes that require personalization in the support that we give to each and every one of these students. But teachers and pedagogues don't have the ability, if they don't have this struggles without the help of artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence isn't necessarily a threat, but it can also be used as a tool to support these people. And with artificial intelligence, we can strategically produce personalized material to be able to better support these students. And because I don't want to speak for too long, I want to share with you the ideas we have come up with to address these issues. For example, at the moment, we're in the process of finalizing the framework we want to develop. For example, as you can see on the slide, we believe there are 4 phases to the journey that the student will begin to go through, and they have to transit through and have to pass through each and every one, and upon being successful in one, they continue. And this allows the students to have an immersive experience and an interactive experience, because we see that current teaching models aren't as active as they could be. And the student needs to be the protagonist at the center, at the heart of all this. And we want to encourage students to find in literature, in media, the ability to navigate the modern world. And these are all skills that can be trained and be developed: understanding, comprehension. And to begin to describe the process, the student would begin with a podcast which allows them to listen and hear stories and engage. And they read and they engage with this podcast, and through them they discover a story. And this story is about 2 people who are learning to navigate the digital world and finding themselves. And then once they've successfully navigated this first part, they continue. And one of the characters of this original podcast will be the person who will help them and support them through this second stage of guided reading. And through it, they will support the student in building understanding and comprehension of. And the 3rd and 4th stages, which are the 2 last ones, work towards building communication skills in allowing students to express themselves through, for example, social media, where they can find and hear other voices, where they can also share and actively participate by sharing their own perspective and views. And then in a blog, through the blog, they can finally express their opinions in a long, extended, coherent way. And through these 8 podcast episodes, the student is able to, through an immersive, interactive way, build their skills as a character of their own story. And teachers, through the use of AI, can support students throughout this process, we believe. This solution has past experiences to support it, because we had already developed an app tool to help develop reading fluency, where we invited students, encouraged them to become streamers. It's an environment, a context they understand well, it's close to them. And we said you can talk about whatever topic they would be interested in. And the topics, they would decide they would have to read about them and read and discuss them on the stream. And these young people would record themselves, and they had the option of watching themselves back, and if they liked it, they would send it to the session, which would be analyzed by an artificial intelligence model, and we'd see how the young people were so committed to the role that they wanted to keep reading, and they would read it so many times, and they would become so sure in themselves. And this type of immersive experiences have a great result because they ensure that the student, the participant, isn't forced, this isn't mandated, isn't a compulsory experience. However, they are guided and encouraged and made to feel a part of their own journey. And this all is born out of satisfying our curiosity when we begin to read a text. Because none of us read something that bores us or something that we feel is not going to contribute at all to our lives. So therefore, these kind of solutions, we believe, have something to do or greatly relevant to this educational paradigm shift that is happening. We should definitely support institutions. And I'm not sure if this works. No, it doesn't seem to work. But there was a short video which I can share with you later, so you can see how this first tool is working. So when students begin to go through this app, they are led to a dashboard, and through this dashboard, the teacher can also see how the student is responding to the material, which skills they are strengthening, which ones they need to work on further. And in this data-driven approach, we can help strengthen critical thinking skills, analysis skills, but we need to be able to teach them. And if we teach them, we can strengthen them in so many other skills, in reading skills, in social skills, in their ability to express themselves. And these are all valuable tools that we believe that AI can support in achieving. And if any of you want to contact me to find out more about the project, I share with you my details. Thank you, Silvana. Thank you very much for sharing with us your presentation. We thank you for this case study of how through AI and these immersive programs, it allows us to personalize this education. And we see how we can approach challenges of writing. And there can be an adaptation. And so all this can come together for real progress. Thank you very much for your speech. Also involved in this very important panel, I introduce you to Hugo, who is originally from Colombia, but is now at the University of Montreal. He has a Master of Science and an architect. He is part of the digital transformation strategist at the University of Montreal, and he will now be sharing with us his speech titled Technology and Digital and Educational Technology, Opportunities and Barriers Without Borders.
Thank you very much.
Señor Dumitru.
This morning, Dimitri was speaking about a very important topic. We nowadays know that when we are having a conversation, suddenly a person may pick up their phone and it may not be like it used to. And sometimes even to establish that conversation, we need a topic from our phones, for example. And it wasn't like that before. It's thinking about, my times, I was thinking about, how was our phones back then? And thinking also about South America. I used to, send messages, but it wasn't the same because I would mainly use my phone maybe to play a game, the snake game. very different thing. And throughout time, the use of these technologies have been very different, even for the financial aspects, like this phone, the same phone that was used for games in my situation, it was also used as a means or as a middleman for some people to act on financial institutions and to make progress or different procedures to be quicker. Also, I'm not sure if you know how this computer in the screen is called. The name was Deep Blue. It was the first machine that won a game of chess against a human. And I'm not sure what Kasparov was thinking on that day in which he got defeated by that machine. When you pick up your phone nowadays, you can think that you have a better Deep Blue that is 1,000 times or even more better than before. And this intelligence that we have nowadays in our hands is accessible to most of us, and it can help you reach the level of any master, we can say, in some aspects. The World Economic Forum Global Risks Perception Survey of 2025 to 2026. It speaks about many risks or many changes that can lead to risks of higher inequality. For example, the different quality that people get in education, it can have a really deep effect on the employment that they have later on. And to give you an example, some media they are exposed to fake news. Nearly 46% of people nowadays only are informed by what they see in social media. However, this also leads to polarization, and all of these topics create a lack of trust in our society. And in different countries like Canada, there are, well, we can look at different statistics. And speaking about different changes that we've seen in this country, for example, is that there's been a 25% increase in French language training enrollment in a single year. And we know that a language is a key aspect of integration or getting integrated in a new country, and how this also increases employment. But all of this has been carried out through online means as well that have supported this. And the digital architecture, the decisions that are carried out in this have a very big impact in all of these statistics. When everyone has the opportunity to learn, when we're all able to share the same opportunities, we can have this progress. But there are some limits. And those limits are, for example, the will of the person itself to use these, or in the way that they use these productive tools. To give you an example, in the Olympics, many athletes participate. They have the chance to win a gold medal and to be part of history. What if, for example, the committee in the Olympics, they decide to not have some tools or some specific instruments, let's say, to use? It's on a report, we find out that AI can change industries, including like this one. But what I'm trying to say with this presentation is that we must not be overly reliant on these tools. That we must not, that just as in the Olympics, that maybe a change of rules can take out a tool that could be really useful for us, that we must not be as too reliable on these tools.
Thank you, Hugo Hernan, for your presentation, for sharing with us and taking us on that timeline of technological advances and the challenges which some might consider we still face, especially with the development of AI as that new technology we are now trying to adapt to. We now want to engage with you, want to ask you all the question, because all of you during your presentations talked about the contribution of AI as a tool which must be personalized and allows people to advance and to overcome barriers, educational barriers. If we know today that students, as Margarita expressed, as people with difficulties, learning disabilities, or people in rural regions, as Silvana talked about, or people who face technological barriers, such as Hugo Hernando shared with us, do they learn better when technology adapts to reality? Here's the question. What are the barriers? What are the barriers what are the barriers which do not allow us to adapt education and limit virtual cameras from being a real tool for the democratization of knowledge? And what limits it from advancing further? Well, from a educational perspective, because that are one of the points you mentioned, what we really need is to work with teachers to create a paradigm shift. This was mentioned in the previous session. I think schools and universities still resist, and they still try to coexist with quite traditional models of education. And we have to try and understand that students today are truly different and have different needs, because there is a lot of evidence. Neuroscience have provided a lot of information on how our brains work, and especially the younger ones who don't have necessarily a paradigm set in stone, as, for example, we have in many adults. And we have to begin to work on this role as a teacher. And I think we've already discussed this a lot. And in the many years I've been working and discussing the topic about new technologies and their impact in an educational environment, and the idea of putting the student at the center of everything. When we arrive at the classroom, it's difficult to apply this, and Therefore, I think the potential for it to strengthen and bolster teacher skills is incredible, but we have to learn and prepare teachers in how to use AI so they can be teachers, true teachers to their students in this new model digital era. Thank you very much, Silvana, for your contribution. Margarita, Ugo, if any of you want to go.
Yes, thank you. Let me mention another barrier, which I think is very relevant. And this has to do with attracting investment. You know, these technologies, they cost money, technologies to support the inclusion of people with neurodivergences or disability, they cost money to get from an idea to pilot stage and then, used at wide scale across different institutions. This all costs a lot of money. And then also on the user side, if you think in many countries there are funds available for people with disability to access assistive technologies, but sometimes this isn't enough, or sometimes the rules about what you're able to fund or get access to might be quite strict. And so when we talked to teachers, students, disability advocates, they really said that there isn't enough funding there to support the use of these tools. That often there's a skepticism among policymakers about the return on investment. People think that people with disability are a small population. They tend to underestimate the scale of the issue. I presented at the start some statistics about the size of the employment and education gaps for people with neurodivergences. And so this is definitely a barrier to getting the best out of these technologies. And I think often policymakers tend to underestimate the size of the population that these tools serve. To give you an example of this, if a tool helps people with memory challenges, it's not just a question of helping people with disability or neurodivergence, associated with memory challenges. Imagine also the help that this tool could be for older people, for example. Once you start thinking about some of the secondary markets that these tools could serve, actually the return on investment becomes a lot larger than you might originally think.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Margarita. I see there's many deans and chancellors here. One of the many difficult things for us is budgets. And this often causes a difficulty. I think that trying to find a way to optimize that concept of evaluation and being able to analyze what works best and generating reusable and tangible tools. For example, we often generate dozens and dozens of data, media that nobody watches and nobody consumes. So it's important in the sense of architecture and the design of all these programs and methods. We have to find a way to simplify them, to reduce the complexity and the excess work we try to put in, which often are the reason this is so costly. Thank you very much to Margarita, Silvana, and Ugo for being here with us and sharing their experiences with us in such a generous way. The knowledge on how to use everything, the knowledge you share and how we use these technologies to overcome the challenges and barriers we have I think we are grateful for everything. We are, because of time constraints, we're going to go straight to the conclusions on this panel. One of these are that platforms, digital learning platforms and AI technology, AI infrastructure is not only a tool, but they're also a way to access information and must be used with a strong focus towards inclusion, quality, and equity in education. A second point, we talked about the democratization of knowledge, and the democratization of knowledge requires a balance, harmony between academic excellence, sustainability, and institutional sustainability. And finally, the future of education will likely be hybrid, collaborative, and global, which will require governments, institutions, NGOs, and the individual to work together in order to enrich innovation and best practices. More than digitalizing content, the real challenge for this summit is to build educational ecosystems which are able to close the gaps that we have and instead expand and grow opportunities for everyone's education. I want to give you all thanks once again for spending this time with us and giving us your positive and very valuable insights and contributions. Thank you very much. Well, we are now going to continue with session number 3 this afternoon. That is why I want to welcome Pilar Botia, who's going to be today sharing with us a practical case, the method developed by Dr. Maria Luisa Piraquive, discovering capabilities and opportunity. We're going to see the context, how this method transforms the being through education. That is why we welcome Pilar Botia. She has a master in international law, and she has a master in international law and human rights, and is currently the director of the campus in the María Luisa Moreno International Foundation. Welcome, Pilar. Please go ahead with your presentation. Good afternoon to you all. What a pleasure to be here with you all, to be able to tell you something very important. That's how, just as the past speakers have filled us with a great and very important valuable knowledge, talking about so many elements, I think it's a shame, such little time. Everything was so interesting. We wish we could enjoy everything into more depth. But here I want to share with you something. It's more a story of a teacher like you, like those who are connecting and are taking part online from around the world. And this woman, this teacher, this wonderful person, she was once a child. She was a child who was born in the countryside. We were earlier talking about people who were far from technology. This girl was born in the countryside, but she was born with a thirst for knowledge, for learning, for an insatiable thirst for knowledge. And there, with her conditions, in a small town in Colombia, there was no access Now that we're talking about access, she had no access to higher education. It's just not possible. She had to move cities. And therefore, this girl, this person who was so special, used technology to teach herself. She taught herself through radio. Perhaps many young people are going to say, radio? What's that? How's that? That's something your parents used. But there were also classes that were given over the radio. And in those classes, I want to tell you, there was no teacher who was there looking at the teaching strategy, looking and checking if the students paying attention or if they fell asleep or how they're doing. But she, within herself, had those values, that discipline, that desire to learn. And not only learn, because she's a teacher. She's a teacher who loves to learn and teach. And she wants to teach to all. Because she knows it's not for some, just for some people, just not just for a few. And she wanted to ensure, she wanted to use her training, her preparations as a teacher to make sure everyone had access, not just one or two, not just those who have iPads or laptops, or even those who are on the countryside or the indigenous people who are far away, who have no access to any technological resources. She decided to teach. And she decided to teach. And she managed to achieve a doctorate in education. And she had many titles, just as many of you do. But the takeaway, the legacy she leaves behind is something we inherit, which is building, forming, preparing mass teachers. That is a great legacy because education is the change. Education is what is going to make sure that society grows and builds. Because sometimes we wonder, why is the world like this? Teachers, educators, this is your role. This is your responsibility. And it is here where we can be happy. It's not just learning in order to learn. It's learning for. We were just hearing the phone, reality, augmented reality, VR. These are all tools, yes, but they are tools for to be happy, for achieving happiness. What an abstract concept? No. It's a concept that we all work towards and we all fight and work towards it. And that's why she has taught so many people. And she thought to herself, how can we do? What can we do? What if people like me discovered that they have so many capabilities, so many skills that they can overcome any and all obstacles in their life? The obstacle of not having a school, the obstacle of not having money, the obstacle of living in depression, in solitude. Because who said that because you're in a developed country, we don't have obstacles? We're in Belgium, we're in Europe, and I'm sure and I know, and she knows it, that there are many obstacles that bog us down, that limit us, that tell us that we can't. Let other people do that. That's not for me. I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to socialize. But it turns out that this woman, Maria Luisa, this doctor in education, what if we help people to discover their capabilities? You were telling us earlier there's criteria we need to be able to have to use AI. How do we do? What would happen? And that's how, for many years, began a career, a work of teaching. And we're going to tell you this very interesting case, de Guajira, Colombia, my country, in which we have people who have 92%. We have 92% multidimensional poverty. What does this mean? They're very, very, very poor. They're not a little poor, they're very poor. But what happens with them? Well, Dr. Maria Luisa came, and she teaches this woman that even to drink water, these women who to drink water have to carry the water on their backs for many hours in order to be able to give their children drinking water, their families drinking water. And therefore, she says, look, don't only use water to drink, use it to grow. You are the owners of this land. This is your land. But we are poor, but we have nothing. Yes, you do. You have land. And I will teach you. I'll give you the knowledge. I'll teach you how to use it, how to make the most out of the resources you do have. And that's how they began. And these girls, these women began to learn. And now, today, there's poverty, there's sadness. These girls have grown to become women who are leaders in their communities, women who teach men, the men who would tell them, you can't. You're wasting your time. Look at this image. Look at this video. This video is the desert of my country. And it's the desert that has become a forest that provides fruit and food, where women use their knowledge and they share this knowledge with others and became leaders. And how did they do this? Through education. Education is what we need to be able to bring these changes, these essential changes to society. Well, I want to tell you, how did we do? How did Maria Luisa do? How did Maria Luisa do to be able to affect this change? We created this campus, this digital learning platform where people begin to discover their capabilities. We're going to talk a little about Dr. Maria Luisa's methodology, because we were talking, how do we do this? How? We have the tools, but tell us. And we were speaking with Dumitru. What is the secret? What is the secret to the method? It's discovering the potential in everyone and to support them in tapping into these resources. And that is why we believe practical courses which are pertinent and relevant to their lives depend to each and everybody in their own context and lives. And that's why they work in the Guajira region, why they work in Romania, why they work in Spain, why they work in Kenya, in Japan. The course. How is it possible? If you just said to me that things don't work in every context, do you know how it's possible? Because of the next step. Because when we prepare and these teachers begin to converse and to talk, and these are people who have received doctorates, but they're also single mothers, they're also teachers, they're also leaders, but they have learned how to overcome the barriers they face. They have the knowledge which helps them prepare and train and support others so that we can have lower school dropout rates, and so that people with this knowledge can use it to benefit their own lives. This support has allowed people to change their lifestyle and to one day, just like the women of the Guajira, become multipliers. Not only are they were once people who were once passive beneficiaries are now active supporters of their people in their surroundings, and now they help people in other contexts. How is this possible? It's possible. It is possible. And this graphic shows how the foundation, which Dr. Maria Luisa, through her method, discovering capabilities and opportunity, has managed to reach 70 countries. We have students in 70 countries. We are contributing. We are seeking to empower everyone. We have teachers, tutors, interpreters, administrators in so many countries, in so many languages. People tell me I never share the languages, but there they are, you can see. We we support the social development goals, digital education goals, and we want to share. I had other examples to share with you of a great friend, a doctor in anthropology, a PhD in anthropology, who studied on the campus, and he found in the campus something very interesting. He already has all the doctorates. He's an anthropologist. He knows a lot, but he found in the campus tools, the skills to live better with his family, to communicate better with his daughters. And that's why he was very happy, because he graduated in 2023 and he said, I want to teach others. Also, Alfajo from Homa Bay, Kenya, received from the campus a few courses. And we went to teach them a topic, and they took that knowledge and they transformed it, and they used it in their own context. And they said, oh, okay, here they're teaching me household finances. I'm going to use this and use it in my community to create a solution and to create a water dispenser to be able to use that water wisely. And with that, we have volunteers around the world. For example, Laura Gala, who's from Switzerland, who supported us greatly, and she found in the campus the opportunity to move forward, to not feel alone. And very important, I have one more minute to tell you all, 80% of our students are women. And there are women of all ages, men and women, of course, from the age of 18 to 79. The over 55s are also learning, and they are also enjoying and learning that they have a lot to learn and a lot to share. And even though they may not be the most technologically skilled or competent, they have something to share. And everybody can contribute something to each other. And there's so many things that aren't easy to transmit. But you, teachers, educators, when you look at your students in the eye, and you can do that. You can do that even through technology. We do it in the campuses meetings. And when you know your student is there, connected, I want to tell you that we had some students who felt so happy when they would meet with their teachers that their eyes would well up, because their country had been ravaged by war, but they still connected, and we saw the hope, the opportunity, the space we gave them, and we saw how we provided something for them, because we see also, and we want to provide that space for everyone. We support people with disabilities. Almost 10%, roughly 10% of our students are people with disabilities. And not only do we support them with a universal, accessible content, but also we have a genuine and authentic concern for the person I see through the screen. We seek to create an inclusive environment, and we put all our creativity and all our minds towards ensuring that that person has access and can enjoy, because our volunteers love others, because they find happiness in the happiness of others. And that is why we have these statistics, because we've had almost 80,000 students. Not all of them have been able to graduate, but 50,000 students have graduated with a lot of hard work, with a lot of support. And that's how we make our contribution to education. And that's how we seek to close the gaps in education. And we'd love to have everything Margarita was saying about having those tools, but what we have free, because this is a free movement, a global movement. Through our 3,000 volunteers, which are just the campus, because the foundation has many more, but this is specific to the campus. We have 3,000 volunteers, which take this education to faraway places, and these 3,000 volunteers who have a fantastic mental health. And do you know how we achieve this? Do you know how this has been achieved? By putting values into practice, by sharing and spending time with others, by working in one of the most beautiful professions, which is being an educator, helping others. Because every one of you who decided to become an educator did it because you have an authentic social conscience, because you do not want to leave this world leaving it the same as when you arrived. And that's how Dr. Mary Luisa, because she is a teacher by excellence. I wish I could tell you more detail. That leader, she is the one who has inspired all of this through her methodology and her example. And this is why we want to share with you Dr. Maria Luisa is willing and very, very keen to share this methodology for you. This is open source for all of you. That is why we want to discover capabilities in everyone alongside you. And we want to thank you all for allowing us to share the experience of the Maria Luisa de Moreno International Foundation.
Muchas gracias, Pilar.
Thank you very much, Pilar. I think all of us who are in the room feel very inspired and moved by the example of Dr. Maria Luisa Piraquive and how everything we have discussed and talked about challenges and barriers to education, and how she being self-taught by applying values managed to access higher education and become a teacher par excellence. And it's beautiful to see how the foundation's campus closes gaps and allows education to reach different territories, regions that may not have had it. And there's not only an education, but a transformation in the being. There's a continuous improvement and growth in both the tutors, the teachers, the interpreters, the administrators, and most importantly, the students. And in campus, the teacher may be in Canada, but there is a student from Japan, and that's wonderful. And the technical support is in Germany, and together we all come together with one shared goal, aim, and intention to share this beautiful methodology, which, as Pilar shared, we wish and we hope to share with all of you and all your institutions, because in that way we can all work to build a better future and society. A society which can grow. This methodology, discovering capabilities and opportunity. We want to thank you all for your participation in today's session. And we invite you all to return tomorrow to the second day of the Global Summit 2026, where we will pick up and continue with session number 6. And we will meet you all at this European Economic and Social Committee. I would like to ask you, Pilar, do you have any other suggestions for the attendees? Or I'll leave with Gino, who is the logistics coordinator, who will give you a greater detail about how the event will proceed. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the attention you have paid to this session. As we have reached the end and the culmination of this session, we are going to be guided by our friend and support member of European Parliament, Dumitru Fornea, who will lead us to a nice place where we can take a beautiful photo all together. Thank you very much.
Pili, ven rápido.
Mauricio.
Esa recomendación para el transporte de mañana los ponentes, para que se traigan equipaje para que los puedan sacar. Todos los ponentes que estuvieron en el...
También se recomienda.
We also recommend in the committee